Hi, Don here. You probably know me as Radio Don. By the way, if you want to follow me, you can first off click the follow button. Also, you can follow me wherever I am socially through my link tree. That is linktr.ee/Radio Don. You can probably see that on the screen right now. Now, the reason I am introducing this is there is something that's been really incredible that has come out in the last few months from Google. Is called Notebook LM. It is an AI program that is online. And it does a lot of things, but what a lot of people use it for is this. You feed information into Notebook LM, whether it's a website or a PDF or whatever it is. It will come out with the usual summary of what is in that particular thing that you fed it. But what it also does for those people who are too lazy to read, like myself, it creates a web-based, AI-based podcast with two people talking like they've known each other for years, talking about what you fed them, and it sounds fantastic. So I decided to try this out. This is the weekly Microsoft Canary build release, which is, by the way, Microsoft Canary build 27818. And I fed the announcement of that build into Notebook LM. What you are about to hear is what came out. Now, this is AI generated. It is labeled as such on this posting. So we're completely clear and transparent about what you are about to hear. If you want to see the original announcement, I have that link in the description. Well, sit back and be amazed, and you might even learn something. We'll talk to you soon. Here's the podcast.
All right, welcome to another deep dive. You know how this works. You send us the sources, we sift through the noise, and pull out the really interesting stuff. This time, we're digging into, let me check my notes here. Yes, the latest from the Windows Insider blog. If you want a glimpse of where Windows might be headed, this is the place to be.
Absolutely. The post you shared from March 19th, 2025, it's all about the Windows 11 Insider Preview build 278H, specifically for the Canary channel. For those who like living on the edge, with the very latest, most experimental stuff, this is where it all starts.
Now, a quick heads up before we get too deep. They haven't released the SDKs, the software development kits for this particular build series just yet.
Right.
But don't worry, there's still a ton to unpack here. We'll be looking at general improvements, some pretty interesting changes over in Windows security, especially when it comes to those Pluton TPM chips, the sunsetting of suggested actions for phone numbers and dates, a whole slew of fixes across different areas of Windows, and of course, can't forget those known issues, including a pretty big one for those of you who've snagged a brand new Copilot Plus PC. So buckle up, we've got a lot to cover.
Yeah, sounds good.
So let's jump right in. The blog post starts off by mentioning this small set of general improvements and fixes. I mean, it's kind of vague, right?
Yeah, a bit. But it does suggest that they're focusing on, just refining those core aspects of the system for insiders, kind of like laying the groundwork for a smoother experience down the line.
Okay, makes sense. And then we get to something a bit more concrete, right?
Mm-hmm.
Windows security.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like Microsoft's getting ready to tell us a little bit more about that Pluton TPM chip, if your machine has one, that is. Soon, you'll be able to go into device security, then security processor details, and you'll actually see more specific info like the manufacturer of the chip and the version number. I find this really interesting because it seems like they're being more transparent, at least with this key security component.
Yeah, I agree. It makes you wonder if this is, the beginning of a trend where users have a clearer picture of their device's security, especially at the hardware level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. Pluton is Microsoft's own security processor.
Right.
So giving users this level of detail right there in the Windows security app, it could really empower those folks who are, more technically inclined and really want to understand what's going on under the hood when it comes to keeping their system safe. It's also interesting to see this emphasis on hardware-backed security.
Yeah.
It's a big thing in the industry right now.
It is.
Imagine if you could easily verify the security of your device, like right down to the core components. It could definitely boost user confidence. All right, let's shift gears a bit. From hardcore security stuff to something a little less technical, shall we? Let's talk about those suggested actions. You know those little pop-ups you'd sometimes get when you copied a phone number or like a date in the future?
Yeah, yeah.
Seems like those are going away. Microsoft is deprecating and disabling this feature. It makes me wonder why, though. Did people just not use them that much?
It's hard to say, really.
Or did they become more of an annoyance than a help? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's always a balancing act with those kinds of features, right? I mean, they're often experiments in a way.
Right.
The idea with suggested actions was probably to streamline common tasks, but maybe user feedback showed that they were more intrusive than helpful in practice. It's a good reminder that, software development is this ongoing process. They try things out, see what works, what doesn't, and then refine or remove things as needed. It really makes you think about how Microsoft measures the success of these smaller features, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, enough of the speculation. Let's dive into those fixes. We've got a pretty long list here, which, fingers crossed, means a more stable experience for our brave insiders out there.
Mm-hmm.
First up, in the general category, they tackled a D3D9.dll crash. Sounds serious.
Yeah, it can be.
Apparently, this was causing a bunch of apps to just fail to launch for some insiders ever since Build 27802.
Right, and D3D9.dll, it's a core component related to how applications display graphics. So yeah, a crash involving this file could have a pretty big impact, preventing programs from even starting. Fixing this kind of foundational instability, that's crucial in these early builds because it directly affects how usable the system is.
Right, and it really highlights the challenges, the kinds of things that can pop up when you're testing pre-release software, right?
Absolutely.
All right, moving on to File Explorer. It looks like they've made some performance tweaks again, specifically when you're unzipping files. They mentioned further improvements, especially when dealing with a large number of small files. Like if you've ever had to extract a massive archive of photos or documents, this is good news.
Oh yeah, definitely. Those little optimizations, they can make a big difference in those everyday tasks.
They also fixed this weird visual bug where the File Explorer home screen might not load correctly, and you just see random name text all over the place. More of a minor annoyance, but still those visual glitches can be a bit jarring, right?
Yeah, totally agree. Well, performance enhancements for everyday things like file management, those are always welcome. These smaller visual fixes, they really contribute to a more polished and reliable user experience. It's all about attention to detail, and that can really make an operating system feel more refined.
All right, next up, Taskbar and System Tray. They've addressed a couple of visual things here. Apparently, the corners of those app window previews, the ones you see when you hover over an icon on the taskbar, they weren't always drawing with the correct rounded shape. A tiny detail, but it shows the level of visual polish they're aiming for.
Yeah, it does. It's those little things that add up.
They also fixed a bug where those underlines, the ones that appear under app icons in the taskbar, they could get stuck even after you close the app. I think we've all seen that one at some point, right?
Oh, for sure. Those little visual artifacts, even if they're minor, they can make the interface feel kind of clunky. Getting rid of them makes for a cleaner, more predictable visual experience.
Okay, moving on to input, and this one sounds like it could have been really frustrating. They fixed a high-hitting ctmon.exe crash that could actually mess with your ability to type.
Wow.
Anything that messes with basic input is a pretty big deal. So what exactly is this ctmon.exe thing responsible for?
So ctmon.exe, it's a process that's part of the Tech Services Framework. Basically, it handles all sorts of text input stuff, things like keyboard layouts, handwriting recognition, you name it. So yeah, a crash in this area could definitely lead to problems with typing and other input methods. It's good they fixed this one.
For sure. Okay, get ready, because the settings section has a few interesting fixes that suggest some work under the hood to improve stability. First up, they tackled an issue that could cause the entire settings app to just, refuse to launch, sometimes with this really cryptic memory error message. And they mention a similar problem with runtimebroker.exe.
Right, when essential system tools like settings just stop working, that can be a real showstopper. You can't troubleshoot, you can't customize, it's a big problem.
Exactly. So kudos to them for tackling those. They also have a specific fix for Japanese users. It seems like the name display at the top of settings in the account section, it was showing first name, last name, instead of the correct last name, first name order for Japanese.
Yeah, a small thing, but really important for localization, It's about respecting cultural norms and making sure the experience feels right for everyone.
Absolutely. All right, on to graphics.
Yeah.
A few notable fixes here. They address something that might have been causing slow video playback when you were using multiple monitors and switching between different display modes.
Hmm.
I mean, that kind of stutter can really mess with your flow, right?
Yeah, definitely. Nobody wants laggy video.
They also made some fixes to prevent crashes in the settings area for display and graphics specifically. And this one's probably a big deal for the gamers out there. They've fixed an underlying issue which could lead to certain games failing to launch after an upgrade. They even mentioned specific DirectX errors. Sounds like a win for anyone who likes to game on their PC.
Oh, absolutely. Graphics problems, especially if they're affecting games or multi-monitor setups, those are really noticeable. Addressing those issues shows that they're making progress in improving stability and compatibility in the graphics area.
Mm,
And yeah, mentioning those DirectX errors suggests they've probably fixed some pretty low-level integration issues.
nice. But wait, there's more. We're not done with the fixes just yet. Under admin protection, they fixed something that was preventing Visual Studio Code, a really popular tool for developers, from being installed when that security feature was turned on. It's good to see them making sure that important tools play nicely with the security features.
Yeah, definitely. Developers often rely on things like admin protection to keep their systems secure, so making sure their tools like Visual Studio Code are compatible, that's crucial.
And then there's a fix for Remote Desktop. They addressed a problem that could cause it to freeze up during a connection. If you rely on Remote Desktop for work or just to access other computers, that kind of instability can be a real pain.
For sure. Remote desktop is a lifeline for a lot of people, and a frozen connection, that can be a major disruption. Fixing that kind of reliability issue, that's a big deal.
All right, last but not least, in the fix department, under Other, they tackled an underlying issue that was causing some apps to just not open at all, with an error message about a missing virtual machine component. That kind of error suggests something's up with how those apps were interacting with the system at a fundamental level.
Yeah, underlying issues, they often point to deeper problems within the operating system itself. Fixing those can lead to broader stability improvements and prevent those weird app crashes in the future.
Okay, we made it through the fixes. Let's switch gears and talk about those known issues. And there's one here that's really important, especially if you've got a new Copilot Plus PC and you're thinking about joining the Canary channel.
Yeah, this is a big one. They've even got a big, bold, important note for Copilot Plus PCs in the blog post.
Oh, wow, they're not messing around.
Nope. So if you're moving to the Canary channel on one of these new Copilot Plus PCs from any other channel, like the dev channel, release preview, or even just a regular retail version of Windows, you might run into a pretty big problem. You'll lose your Windows Hello PIN and biometrics.
Seriously, that's a major bummer.
It is. You'll get an error message, 0x00000025, saying something like, something went wrong and your PIN isn't available. Not exactly the smoothest welcome to the Canary channel.
No kidding. At least they provide a workaround. You should be able to get your PIN working again by clicking Set Up My PIN. Still, losing your main way to log in, even temporarily, that's something you definitely want to be aware of before jumping into these early builds, especially on new hardware. What do you think? Is there some kind of incompatibility with these Copilot Plus devices?
It's hard to say for sure, but it does highlight the challenges of mixing brand new hardware with pre-release software, those early adopter woes. Even though there's a workaround, it's a reminder that the Canary channel can be a bit rough around the edges, especially with cutting-edge hardware.
Yeah, good point. It's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. Okay, there's also a new known issue listed under Taskbar. They're working on fixing a problem where the taskbar icons don't scale up correctly when you switch your PC into tablet mode. So if you're on a convertible laptop or a tablet, those icons might stay really small. It's marked as new W, so it seems like they just discovered this one.
Yeah, probably something they found in their internal testing. As they keep tweaking the system, new issues are bound to pop up. It's just part of the process,
Makes sense. All right, before we wrap things up, let's quickly go over those reminders for anyone who's thinking about dipping their toes into the Canary channel. Setting the right expectations and all that.
Yeah, definitely. It's important to remember that Canary channel builds, these are like the bleeding edge of Windows development. They're early platform changes, and they're not tied to any specific future release of Windows. Those features you see, they might never actually ship, or they could change drastically by the time they do. It's really a testing ground for new ideas.
It's like a giant sandbox where they're experimenting with different concepts. Really.
Exactly.
Features could appear, disappear, or get completely overhauled based on feedback and internal testing. They also remind us about control feature rollout. which means they often enable new features for just a small group of insiders at first. So don't be surprised if you don't see everything that's been announced right away.
And sometimes it can seem a bit backwards because features might actually show up in the dev and beta channels before they land in Canary.
Really? Why is that?
Well, each channel has a slightly different focus and testing cadence. Canary is all about the earliest platform changes, not necessarily the earliest features.
Okay, that makes sense. Another important point is that features that are still in heavy development, they might not be fully translated into other languages yet. Localization, that comes later in the process as things become more stable. So if you see some English text in your localized version of Windows, that's probably why. And they encourage you to report those instances through the Feedback Hub. Good to know. And for anyone who might decide the Canary channel isn't for them, it's crucial to know that leaving it requires a clean installation of Windows 11. You can't just roll back to a more stable channel. You have to completely wipe your system.
Yeah, that's because of the significant architectural changes that are often present in these early builds. It's not a decision to take lightly.
Definitely. They also point out that the desktop watermark you see in the corner, that's totally normal for these pre-release builds. And lastly, if you ever want to check which build is in each of the insider channels, they recommend checking out the Flight Hub.
So yeah, these reminders, they're really important for anyone participating in the Insider program, especially in the Canary channel. It's a chance to see the future of Windows taking shape, but it comes with the understanding that things can be a bit unstable and experimental.
All right, so let's wrap up our deep dive into Windows 11 Insider Preview Build 27818. We covered the general improvements, those upcoming Pluton TPM details in Windows security, the phasing out of suggested actions, that huge list of bug fixes, addressing everything from graphics to input, and of course that crucial known issue for all you Copilot plus PC users out there.
It's fascinating to see the constant work they're putting in, the constant refinement, bug fixing, and introducing those subtle but potentially significant changes like the increased transparency around the Pluton TPM and those reminders about the Canary channel. They're so important for understanding the context of these early releases.
Absolutely. So here's a thought for you, our listeners. Considering these Canary channel builds are so early and experimental, out of all the changes and fixes we talked about today, which one do you think has the potential to make the biggest impact on the future of Windows, and why? Is it a tiny bug fix that could improve stability for everyone, or maybe a bigger feature like those enhanced Pluton details? Let us know what you think. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.